The Empowering Tools channel presents the Empath Council. The council is made up of empaths who are committed to nurturing the skill of empathy through knowledge and discussion. Are you ready to be more empathetic and use self-compassion as a basis for a more empowered life? This is the place for you. Welcome to the Empath Council. We're glad you're here.
The follow-up question to what is empathy, because I feel like we can define this very quickly. My follow-up question to that is, what have you noticed over the past 6 months that has come up for you about what empathy is? How has that changed? How has that altered? How has that moved you? How has that affected things? How has it not affected things? Maybe you knew everything there was to know about empathy. I believe that of you 5 people. It amazes me. So yeah, first, can we get a pretty good definition, pretty good working definition? And for that, I turn to our scholar, Lindsay. What is empathy?
Okay, empathy is recognizing that someone is in pain or that someone is experiencing joy, for example. It can be a facilitative or debilitative emotion. Mm-hmm. And then we relate to that feeling and feel with them. So empathy is recognizing someone is experiencing something and then relating to that feeling and feeling with them.
Fabulous. Great. Roxy, I see the wheels. Bring it, girl.
I think empathy is just allowing yourself the vulnerability to recognize other people's emotions, that they might be different than your own. Mm-hmm. It's a really vulnerable experience. And we like to think of it as like a very gracious experience, like I'm offering empathy, which like it sort of is, but at the same time, it's kind of dwelling in the space that you have zero control in the situation. You're not going to change the way somebody's feeling, and you need to give them space to feel it.
Whew. So it's a very permissive experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience over the past year, I've noticed that empathy is a very messy experience. There's nothing clean or polite about it. It can be very difficult. And it can be very easy, and rarely has it been clean or polite. So, going on. Any other thoughts right now? Oh, Kristina.
I agree with what you were saying about like how it can be messy. Like you have, and we've said this before, you have to be in the right place sometimes to offer that. Like today, someone reached out to me, they were having a hard time, and I was like, oh, I have the space and the ability to open up to give empathy, but that's not always the case. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Check in with yourself.
The mental health metaphor right now is spoons.
The spoons.
Yes. Who wants it? Roxy, do you want to tell us about spoons?
Yeah. So spoons, I know it from Jenny Lawson, but I know it's introduced by another. I know it's used in the mental health community, but essentially the idea is that it takes a spoon to do everything that you do throughout the day. And normal, healthy people have a seemingly unlimited amount of spoons. So you wake up in the morning, it takes a spoon to, I know they don't, but this is like the baseline, right? You establish the baseline of, it takes a spoon to get out of bed. It takes a spoon to brush your teeth. It takes a spoon to put in your contacts. It takes a spoon to take a shower. It takes a spoon to choose clothes. It takes a spoon to get dressed. It takes a spoon to get to the kitchen. It takes a spoon to decide what you're going to eat. It takes spoons to make breakfast. It takes spoons to eat breakfast. It takes spoons to clean up breakfast, right? So it's the spoons for every single thing that you do. And when you have other things happening, like life in general, any sort of mental health issues, a pandemic, grief, any sort of experience going on that detracts, that requires a large amount of spoons to deal with, it takes spoons from other things. And so while you might have the spoons to get to the grocery store, you might not have the spoons to finish your grocery shopping and get home and put everything away. And so you choose not to go to the grocery store, right? And so that's the idea of spoons. And so you have to kind of evaluate, okay, where are my spoons at? How many spoons do I have?
Yeah.
And how do you replenish the spoons too?
Yes. And the reason that I like this is because we've always looked at willpower like it's this muscle. Like if I just build it this muscle, I will be big and strong, the Arnold Schwarzenegger of my field, right? No. Horse pucky, as Colonel Potter says. Okay? No, I refuse. Willpower is actually a tank of gas, or I also like spoons. I am ringing. Sorry. Okay. I like tank of gas or spoons because these are finite resources that can be depleted. And the biggest thing that I like with spoons is that they are definitive. Like that is a physical thing that I can hold in my hand and think about and go, wow, I need to put that spoon back in the drawer because I don't have access to that, you know? The other thing that I like about spoons is you can have big spoons and little spoons. You can have hot spoons and cold spoons. Like there's a lot of sensation surrounding this that can affect how things happen for you. So yeah, spoons. Kristina, back to your point that you had the spoons or the mental space or brain capacity to be able to be there for someone.
Yeah.
Empathy is something that uses up more than our fair share of spoons if we are not used to that. So
yeah, and sometimes it can like catch you unaware, like, oh, okay, I can't take more.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, awesome. Dianna, I see a thing.
I guess the thought that crossed my mind, I love all of these definitions, and it's like feeling with others, seeing others, being with them. And I guess that's something that's like super important to me when I'm interacting with someone, is I like to, like, I don't respond super well if someone's like, oh, I can't imagine how that must feel. Like, I'd be like, you can't, what? You don't get it? You know, like I need to be seen, and when there's connection and you know, and someone feeling with me. I think one of the most moving experiences I ever had in college was I was very upset about a conversation I had with a family member, and I sat down, I was crying. I was sitting on like the corner by the bathroom, just sobbing. And one of my roommates like kneeled down across from me, and I told her all about it, and she started crying with me. You could tell how it affected me. I'll never forget. It's the first time anybody had ever cried with me. So to me, that's like one of my ideal empathy, is someone not necessarily falling apart with me, but connecting, you know, being with me in that space.
Yeah. There is something that you just said that I really want to highlight, and that is empathy someone showing you empathy helped you feel seen. Yeah, that's important. That's really important. Okay, I want to hold on to that for just a second. I want to come back to replacing spoons or building up a depleted supply of spoons. I want to come back to that because I think that there's a key in what we're talking about. Becki, though, I saw a thing earlier, didn't catch it before, and now I saw it again. What do you got?
Well, I'll just do two quick little comments. The definition of empathy, and then go into the spoons thing, because I have a thought on that. I think for me, what I've learned over the past 6 months and how empathy has, my definition of empathy has changed, is I've seen it not as a static definition, like necessarily, but as a framework for viewing life, framework for viewing a situation, and it's a perspective shift. And I can notice when someone in a situation employs the use of empathy, but also that perspective of even just looking at the situation with an empathetic lens. And I can also conversely see I'm becoming better adept at noticing when someone fails to use empathy as a framework for viewing a situation. And I have noticed that sometimes, with what we're talking about with the spoons, sometimes the reason why I like that idea is it almost feels like, what can you hold in your hands? It's like we've talked about those arrows that can fit in your women back in the olden days, when they were actually the hunters, and they would have olden days. Decca said olden days. Back in Amazonian warriors would create their own. They would create their own bows and arrows, or they would help create bows and arrows, and they would help create now I'm forgetting the word.
Quiver.
And they would choose the size of the quiver based on the size of their family. And because of that, the size of the quiver would expand or contract based on their needs. And so the amount of arrows that could fit into the quiver would be different for each woman and each warrior. And so based on this, with the spoons, the amount that we can hold might be different at different times. And we can only use a spoon if we can handle it, if we have the ability to do that. And so I think with the framework idea, it's like, right now, I don't have the spoons to address this situation in the framework that is going to be healthy for me or for this person. So maybe I need to step away. Or right now I can use that and look at this with the framework. And hopefully that framework that perspective becomes always part of us. Mm-hmm. And we always are empathetic, and everyone in the world just, suddenly has that ability. But I think it's not even just like an action, but it's a perspective shift for me.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Hey, I think what I love most about that too is that if a woman chooses to have a small quiver, no one's looking at her and going, you need a bigger one. No. Sorry, you just have to, that's up to her.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the time we sort of make decisions about how much we can emotionally handle for each other, that there's an expectation. I don't think that's cool. I don't know that we do it on purpose in some sort of attempt at being cruel to each other. I just don't think that we do it with a lot of thought either. Okay, so Lindsay, what else did you have to add? I asked you for a definition, but I haven't gotten an opportunity to come back to you yet. So what do you got?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about what Becki said, and then I think it was you that said about the different sizes of spoons, like a big spoon, little spoon. Mm-hmm. And I think, we've decided to get active now. Okay.
Sully's like, don't talk to them, talk to me.
Yeah.
Talk to me. Your spoons need to be for me.
Yeah. So sometimes, can you hear me, or is his paw covering?
Oh, no, we can.
You can hear. Yeah. Okay.
You're muffled, but it's okay. You're understandable.
Okay. So sometimes we have a teaspoon that we can give, and other times we have the big giant serving spoon that we can give. And I think that that's okay. Like, that whole spectrum is okay. And deciding, what we can give at that time, and not placing judgment on ourselves for giving a teaspoon, because that's still helping someone, to Diana's point, feel seen and heard and understood,
Yeah.
And it all matters. And there are times when we won't be able to give any of our spoons, but even a teaspoon might feel insignificant, but it's not to the person receiving it when empathy is given with sincerity. And I think that empathy is just understood to be sincere.
Yeah. And I think, true empathy will always be sincere. A good director friend of mine taught me the quote, what comes from the heart goes to the heart. And I've always felt very clear about that sometimes my intention might not land the way that I want it to, but one moment. What do you need, sweetheart? I can come and get it in a minute. Is that okay? Okay, bye. He's like, okay, bye. This was him informing me this morning. He goes, Mom, we've started calling me Mom. He's like, Mom, I have controversy in my head. I was like, you have controversy in your head? And he's like, yes, there's a raging disagreement in there. And I was like, okay, what's the raging disagreement? He goes, whether or not to show Diddy this book today. And I was like, oh, well, you don't have to make that decision now. And he's like, still, it rages on. And he walks away. And I'm like, okay, little philosopher, bye. Yes, dear. Could I please have some juice? Yes, you can. Go for it. Okay, juice is very popular at my house this morning. Okay, so we were talking about empathy. We're talking about authenticity. We're talking about sincerity. I can't even remember what I was going to say now. So there we go. Fair enough. Can we go back to replacing spoons? Because here's the thing that I think that has been demanded of us. And the reason that this whole thing started was I wanted to talk about keeping a store of empathy in your back pocket to use at all times. And the reason that I wanted to talk about that is because being an anti-racist demands a lot of spoons. And I can only imagine the demand on marginalized populations, persons of color, and those people who have to deal with it all the time. So, and that's not empathy, that's common humanity that allows me to say that. And I think that we need to get to a point as anti-racists where we are as adept at using those spoons wisely and replenishing them as quickly so that we can continue to deal with that anti-racism. Because it's one thing to be called upon to be there for one another in ways when other people can step up and support each other. But it's another thing in our society, I don't think that the option exists for us to step down from it. That there are times where we need to take breaks and we need to do what we can to take care of ourselves. And, that's very important. and the work of anti-racism, anti-misogyny, anti-colonial privilege, all of those exist, not along a spectrum that requires our pretty much constant attention. So let's talk about replenishing spoons when we are dealing with our own fragility. And I'm not just talking about white fragility, which is a part of this, but I'm also talking about the times when life just knocks us out and all of our spoons are just completely gone. How do we do that? Because I feel like that is something that we are now keyed up to discuss, and address. What is it that we can do? One of the things I would like to answer very quickly is that I learned through teaching excellence in ACT and SAT testing that one of the things a student can do to quickly replenish willpower and confidence on a test is to imagine their favorite movie star, celebrity, sports figure, whoever it is, walking in the room, crouching down right here next to their face and saying, "You got this." And if I think about that, I'm probably going to imagine Alan Rickman doing that and being right here. And if he is right there and doing that, that little giggle and everything, that was a replenished spoon right then. So I think we think of replenished spoons as like a bubble bath or these like long, huge, massive things, when really that was a thought process that allowed us to come to a place of neurostability. So what are some of the other things that you have found help you return those spoons to their place in your hand rather than on the ground or given to someone else?
I'm going to speak to this one because I have a list of things. And that's the thing for me, is that I think we all have to have a list of our own things, right? Yeah. Is like Alan Rickman might help you, but I would be like, I'm sorry.
What?
Who are you? And I would struggle with that, right? But like that idea is really great. And so what I'm saying is we have to get really specific. So, Kate, I love that it's Alan Rickman for you, right? Like Alan Rickman is on your list, right?
Right.
For me, not a chance. But there are other people who are on that list. But there's also things like, hey, like maybe stand up and move your body.
Yes.
For just a minute.
Big one.
Maybe go outside and just drink the sunshine for a hot second. Mm-hmm. Maybe go for a walk. Mm-hmm. Maybe write a little bit. Maybe it's take a nap. Maybe it's cook something in the kitchen. Maybe it's whipping up a batch of fudge. Maybe it's like, there's a whole list of things for me that are like my go-to spoon replenishers. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really important to recognize, and it's a slow process, right? So it's a really slow process of saying, first you have to recognize this concept of the spoons. Mm-hmm. And you have to recognize, oh, okay, this is demanding a lot of spoons, right? You have to identify what's sucking the spoons, right? Identify the leaks. And then you can start identifying, oh, like I'm starting to feel a little bit better, or, oh, that helped, that, whatever. And I keep a running list on my phone of like, oh, this is something that actually helped that I didn't realize was going to help. Do the thing. Or this is the thing I thought was going to help and didn't help at all. Pay attention to those things. And it's kind of a slow process. And so I would encourage everybody, as we're starting to identify what replenishes the spoons, there are certain things that are really, really helpful for most people. Mm-hmm. Like drink more water, please. Drink more water, right? Yeah. But there's also things that will only work for you or that will work better, right? That might, like one thing might replenish a teaspoon while another thing might replenish a whole big box of serving spoons, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different things. And so I think as we have this discussion, it's important to remember that this is not an inclusive list. This is not an exclusive list, right? Like as we start to list these things.
It's a working list.
And exactly. Pay attention to what works for you individually.
Okay, I want to go to Lindsay and I want to point out something really quick. We identified earlier that empathy is the ability to recognize that someone else is having an emotion and then to feel that with them. What you just described is self-empathy because you recognize that you are having an emotion. Okay, continue, Lindsay, go.
I was going to say, let's go to somebody else for a second, and then we'll come back to me.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I have a lot of thoughts.
Okay, go for it, Becki.
First of all, I think self-care is extremely important. And I just have a quick little story of when I was taking my GRE to go to get my master's. And I had a moment where I pictured my dead Nana put her hands on my shoulder, lean over, and look at this question that I had. It was this special moment where she's like, "You got this." And then she looked at it, and I was like, "This is a hard question." She's like, "Heck if I know." That's what she said. And I started laughing in the middle of the test. I was seriously like,
well done. Well done.
It was like the best, and it brought me really a lot of joy. So that's just an aside. Okay. And okay, I have two thoughts. One, I had a conversation with my husband the other day about this council that we're part of. And he said, I think it's so neat that you are part of this every week. And because you're part of it every week and you have the discussion, you're able to find it in other moments. You're able to have, like, he and I have had more discussions about empathy, which he's amazing. And he is an empathetic person, but we haven't had a lot of like discussions about empathy as a couple, so it's been really neat that our discussions have increased. That subject has been part of our discussion more, and he noticed that because I'm spending time focusing on this and discussing this, it has been a bigger part of my life. So if you're looking to increase empathy and you're looking to replenish spoons in order to be empathetic, having discussions, I think, for me, have been great. And that could be in a council, that could be in therapy, that could be with a partner or a friend or a confidant or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt.
So I think that is a huge thing that I recognize in myself. The other thing that is kind of tag team part of that is that there have been some things this past year that have been difficult for me to give spoons to or to show empathy in some relationship issues that I've had. And one thing that I've recognized that it is okay to sit in discomfort for a minute. Even if you're talking about things with people, even if you're working to be empathetic, you don't have to wrap everything up with a pretty little bow and present it and be okay and have it all just done. It's okay for things to be a little bit uneasy and for you to still be working through that. So I always want anyone who's listening to feel comfortable knowing that none of us are there. None of us have arrived. And if you're working towards empathy and you're working towards replenishing spoons or whatever it is, and you're not really getting there, or maybe you're sort of getting there and then you're sort of not, that is okay. And I have learned that with myself this past year that has been so freeing that everything doesn't have to be resolved immediately.
Yeah, thank you for that. Roxy, as you were talking about your list, and I just want to bring this in really quick because this is really important. As I worked with these students on this attention getting exercise, and you're exactly right, not everyone is going to even know who Alan Rickman is. He plays Snape, by the way, just in case. Yeah.
Yeah. I fell asleep during Harry Potter.
You're cool,
I didn't
man.
even make it to meeting Snape.
We'll watch Sense and Sensibility sometime, and the thing that you will watch is my face as we watch that movie because. So it's maybe you don't even know who that is. It's really not about the celebrity, and as Becki pointed out with her story, it's really about the engaging in your own fantasy, your own imagination. And what I want to point out to students is that can replenish willpower and confidence simply because you are taking control from external circumstances and bringing it internal. When you're saying that my locus of control belongs here, and you are deciding for yourself how you will react to that. And even Becki's Nana coming to her and saying, heck if I know, like it's a spontaneous vision that I'm not going to discount whether or not she was actually in the room with you, like that could be the case. But also even just that moment of spontaneous imagination can have a long-term, long-reaching effect. So sometimes it's about doing a thing where we have this physical experience, but we have a physical layer, an emotional layer, a mental layer, and a spiritual layer. And that emotional and mental layer often gets ignored when really the mental layer has so much power that just saying to yourself, I'm going to have a discussion with myself right now, and just sitting in that discussion, other people call those those meditations. I call it, script writing. But whatever it is for you, like that's how that works, right? So the discussion can be external, it can be internal, but accounting for all four of those layers as you approach this is really important. And then I'm so glad you said that about feeling your feelings, sitting with the discomfort, because I had that thought earlier. That's what I was trying to get out when Sully came in, and then you just said it. So thanks for getting that out there. Huzzah for collective consciousness. Okay, Lindsay, we're back. Let's go.
Yes. Okay. So one of the things I was thinking that our listeners might be wondering as we're talking about this, and as we're talking about those big things that need to be taken care of in society and around us and within our own lives too, is that, so they might be wondering, how do I do self-care? How do I go inward when there's so much that needs to be done outward? Like if I'm taking time away from doing the outward thing to work on the inward thing, like that makes me feel anxious or stressed or whatever. Yeah. And so one thing that I want to liken this to is I teach my students 50 minutes at a time. And it's so important to me to do self-care with them and to have them have self-care instilled in their lives and practice doing that I take 3 minutes out of the 50 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes out of the 50 minutes to just sit and do self-care. And it looks different every week. Sometimes it's breathing for 3 minutes and that's all they're doing is just sitting there and breathing. Yesterday, we wrote a list of things we're grateful for. Other times we do other activities that is a form of self-care. And none of them are bubble baths because we can't, right? They're all that, and bubble baths for me are on my list. Like they are on my list.
Right. That's great.
And so, but it's other things, and it's taking the time to replenish yourself and what I share with them and with anybody that questions why I take 3 to 5 minutes out of only 50 minutes, that's like crucial time to be teaching the content. What I say to them is that the students and myself, when we're doing self-care, it gets us back into a place where we are present, we're open. It gets us into a moment of where the things that I was worrying about as I was walking into class, I'm not worrying about them in those 3 to 5 minutes. I can recenter, I can refocus, and then I can turn my energy to the course material. Mm-hmm. So same thing with, now I'm going to bring it into like a real life. Well, that is real life, but now I'm going to take it into like a bigger issue. Mm-hmm. So I just taught a 3-part workshop series on how to support a loved one who lives with mental illness. And I had it all set up where I was going to focus on compassion in 3 different ways to help the people support their loved one. Like it was tied directly to supporting their loved one. But as I was studying and getting those materials prepared, I thought, no, I need to shift this. And 2 out of the 3 workshops were on, actually 2 1/3 of the 3 workshops were focused on self-compassion. The reason for that is because as people had the strong foundation of self-compassion and taking care of themselves, being kind to themselves, being mindful, remembering that they're human and they're not going to be perfect and it's okay, they then have the strength and they have the tools to then support their loved one who lives with mental illness. And we only talked about that part for 2/3 of the 3rd workshop. So it's so important. So if our listeners, going back to my original statement when I started this clip, is that there are those big things that are happening out there, and they do require our attention and our energy and our thought and our imagination to help come up with solutions that can be beneficial. It also requires us to look inward and do that self-care. And I promise, like, it might seem counterintuitive to take time away from doing the thing that needs the attention. It's so impactful though, and it gives you the strength to keep going on, to be at your best, and to give where you can and when you can.
Yes. And I really appreciate that you brought up, in the first place, I love that you're demonstrating empathy for the audience as we're talking about this, because I love that we're like, here, let's talk about self-empathy. Let's talk about how we have empathy for our audience who are imaginary. At this point, as we're talking about this, we don't know the audience. Hi, how you doing? Um, and as you're demonstrating that, and then you're talking about this self-compassion, you brought up that we have these bubble bath ideas about what this is, when really it doesn't need to be all that. As you're talking about this breathing thing, and you said, I'm just breathing, I thought about this skill set that we have, that we've had our whole lives, that requires a spoon and gives a spoon. We do breathing naturally. It's not just required for biology, there's a mental side to that. But it does give us back spoons depending on how well we've developed this skill of breathing. So it can be something that does require some thought up front, but after a while, that spoon just isn't a necessary consideration anymore. We can spend that spoon without thought, because this is a skill set. So like that exists in many different arenas, where we can just expend that spoon and get 2 or 3 back, or expend one and get one back as we're doing it. So I think that that's a really important call out there. Okay, great. I would like to go around. We are at time right now. Go for it, Becki.
Can I just say one quick thing that I noticed about Kate and me? We've talked a couple times about this thing that's called, I'm going to call a busy balance, that allows us that if we have too much, we go crazy. And if we have too little, we go even crazier.
Yeah.
And so people, the one thing that potentially in this search for finding the self-care that is right for you, please consider rejecting any shaming beliefs that you are too busy because you should be as busy as me, or you are not busy enough because or you shouldn't take that bubble bath because you need to spend time cleaning your bedroom, or whatever it is. Take any of whatever that is and put it away, and find the thing as you are finding the thing or things that work for you.
Mm-hmm. I have a mantra that I say over and over to myself, and it's because I work as an entrepreneur. When I finish my day, there's always that pull to do one more project, to do one more thing. And I noticed a nightmare of this going, where I would work for 12 hours and then I'd be like, okay, now I got to go do dinner for people in my house. And at the same time, I'm thinking, oh, I should really send one more email. I should really do this. So I learned a long time ago to draw that boundary and just say, let it be enough. Becki, at the beginning, you told us a story where you realized I am where I needed to be. I was where I needed to be tonight. And I think if we give ourselves that permission is such a good spoon giver. And that permission, that it's also the antidote to shame. If you're looking for a way out of shame, permission is the exit in symptom land. Bill O'Hanlon, I will link his book below, called Do One Thing Different. He talks about the exit from symptom land and shame is permission based. But that permission of let it be enough, and the permission of I was where I needed to be, and the permission of I'm committed. I committed to do that thing, and I'm totally cool letting it go. Hang the consequences, and sometimes that is really important. What I'd like to do really quickly is just go around and get any last thoughts as we're sweeping through. I want to start with Roxy. Get some last thoughts from Roxy. How you doing, kid?
Okay, so here's the last thoughts for me, is that you will inevitably mess up.
Oh gosh, thank you. Yes, I'm really glad we talked about this.
We've been having these discussions for a while now.
Yes, we have.
And so empathy is on my mind all the time, to the point that sometimes it makes me a little angry, because I recognize that I'm not acting with empathy. And I had a situation a couple of months ago after we had started these discussions, and I thought I was reacting with empathy. And this last Sunday, it was brought to my attention that, in fact, I was acting like a total dirtbag, without, like, completely lacking empathy. And I have written out my apology note, but I have not sent it yet because my pride is preventing me from putting a stamp on the envelope. But you will mess up. You absolutely will mess up. And you have two options when that happens. You can either let it knock you down and say, well, I suck at empathy, so I'm not even going to try. Or you can say, oh, I really, really messed up, and I'm going to try to do better next time, knowing that I will absolutely mess up again. And so as we have all of these discussions, as we talk about how do you replenish your spoon so that you have enough spoons to be empathic, like how do you do all of these things? Just know it is not pretty. It is, as Kate said, very, very messy. Yeah. And just like learning anything else, the more you know, the worse it will feel when you mess up.
For a while.
For a while. I'm going to trust you on that. I'm going to trust it for a while. I haven't hit the point that I haven't crossed the peak yet. I'm sure
learning theory was part of my communications degree.
There you go.
Yeah, this learning theory thing is like a pretty big deal. And learning theory, one of the things I learned is that you mess up, stuff gets really awful, and for a while you feel like a total failure. But what's actually happening is you are building the skills necessary to be really good at it. So every time you see that failure, I just want everyone listening in, and you personally, because I love you and I love everyone on this council, I would also like you to recognize that that is evidence that the skill can exist. So, good news. Thanks, Vygotsky. Okay.
There you go. So there you go. When you fail, just that's evidence that the skill can exist and is trying to exist, and it's trying really, really hard to grow.
And it still feels sucky. I'm sorry.
It sucks so hard, but it's cool. We'll get it. We'll be fine.
I love that you're like, here's my experience and here's this thing, and let me tell you about my pride. Like, you're just, I love you so much, Roxy. You're like, let's talk about this.
Right here on the other side of this is the note that I have written to this person who I need to apologize to. It is haunting me.
Oh,
I think I'm going to send it right
virtual hugs. Virtual hugs and basketballs and I don't know, walks or spending time in the sunshine. Okay. Or bubble bath if that's what you need today. Okay.
I am way too tall for a bubble bath.
Like when I finally got a tub to fit me, I was like, oh my gosh, people love this because you can actually fit your whole body in. And I have these like things that make the bubbles huge. It's like, what?
We got an inflatable hot tub because we are those kind of people. We bought an inflatable hot tub. And let me tell you, I'm 6'1", my husband who's 6'6", and my brother who's 6'9", I think, all sit there like noodles in a pot, but we are all covered in water. We'll sit there covered in water. I'm like, you know what? This is as good as it's ever going to get, and we'll take it.
That's awesome.
Anyway, total sidebar. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's amazing.
Spoons for being haunted. I appreciate that so much. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Dianna. Hey, Dianna, got any last thoughts for us?
Yeah. I wanted to respond last thing, and I'm staring at a clock while I'm doing it. So, but
funny.
Because I really appreciate the comment about being uncomfortable, and the question that came to my mind was, or not a question, the comment was, look what I learned. So like the last audition I had in New York City when I went for my little trip was I crashed and burned. And basically it was because I was there all day and I didn't know if I was going to get in because it was an equity audition and I did not warm up my voice. So when I actually was called in for the audition and I opened my mouth, it was like singing in the rain, and Lena Lamont was doing all the vocals.
Oh my gosh.
I was pitchy. It was exciting. And I cried. I failed. But I remember walking away from it going, I'm so grateful for that experience because of what I learned. And it was incredibly uncomfortable. That's a way easier thing than white fragility and dealing with anti-racism and things like that. But I think the uncomfortable stuff can create tremendous learning. But the great and terrible thing about these issues that you brought up is there are so many angles to them. Like it's Black History Month, so I've started listening to these great books, and I start with Stamped, which is a really fun, great read, right? And the next one is Hood Feminism, and it is painful and infuriating and brilliant and powerful. And the next thing I went to was How to Not Get Shot, which is a hilarious book. Basically highlighting, and it was what I needed, like in the order that I could handle it at the time. And I can't wait to get into my next one. It's been a busy week, but it was like, I couldn't do Hood Feminism every day, but dang, am I glad I listened to it. Mm-hmm. But I learned a ton from How to Not Get Shot. Mm-hmm. Like, so, you know what I mean? Like, so when we get, and when we need to set those boundaries where we are too exhausted to take on these issues, there are other ways to still be engaged. Yeah. I'm still able to continue to learn. And be grateful for the discomfort, but I can find other ways that are a little more comfortable, but still sincere, still honest, still involve a reckoning, still help me to grow. But how to not get shot is a really hilarious. If you can handle the MF and hearing the N-word law, it's great. I love it. So anyway, so there's we can keep going while still knowing our limitations, or knowing how many spoons we've got.
Of course. Thank you for that. Okay, Becki, switching to you, friend. I think it's 12:13.
I said a lot today, so I don't think I have a ton to offer or add at the end. The only thing I would say is I'd just like us to consider a corkscrew, and not a corkscrew like this, but a corkscrew like this. And in our quest to kind of move from where we are to where we want to be in becoming more of an anti-racist, becoming an advocate, becoming more empathetic, whatever it is that we're working towards, figuring out our own self-care or whatever, it's sometimes I like to think of my progress like a corkscrew that's like this, and instead of just going up, it's like I go and then I might sort of like learn things deeper, and I might feel like I'm going backwards, but really I'm actually gaining what I need to know to go more. And then maybe I feel like I'm not getting this is harder, but I'm actually like not just learning linearly, but learning deeper and having that complexity of understanding that I really need to keep going. So be patient with yourself and with others, and recognize that we're all kind of on this path together.
Yes. Awesome. Kristina.
I agree. It's been very interesting as we have worked on this the last 6 months, like seeing the change in myself. Maybe most importantly, the awareness on some of the things I say and do in my interactions with other people. But I love the reminder about the self-care. And, you got to check in with yourself. You can't just give. You're going to run out of spoons. And I liked the suggestions on what you can do to replenish yourself. Like for me, sometimes it's as simple as just getting outside of the house. Like sometimes when I get in that rut, I just want to like stay in bed and read a book, which is a good way to replenish too. But sometimes it's the things that I don't realize I need the most, like getting outside, breathing fresh air, stuff. Little things can make a huge difference. Earlier, when Becki was talking, I just had this quote pop in my head, and I was like, who said that? So I looked it up, and I want to share it. So I'm sure you guys have all heard it. It's comparison is the thief of joy. And it was Roosevelt who said it. Good on him. But Google was really smart in what it said, so I had to share it. After saying who said it, it said that if we compare ourselves to others, we may be left with feelings of inferiority or superiority, and neither creates an emotionally healthy human being. So thanks, Google.
Yay, Google. Good for philosophizing and search terms.
Yay. This conversation. So it's so true. Like it could be in any activity that we're doing. A lot of us are in theater. It can be in our emotional journey, how we give self-care or give emotional support to others. Don't compare yourself. This is your journey.
Yeah, I really love that. I had a therapist who once asked me as I was comparing myself to a person I admire very much in my life, and she just said, "What do you need?" And I said, "Wait, what?" And she said, "That's the answer to comparisonitis, that anytime you have that, you just need to ask yourself, what do you need?" And I thought, whoa, that's very deep. I hadn't really thought about what I needed. And she's like, yeah, usually we're comparing because we aren't aware of what we need. So, huzzah. Okay. Mr. Lananzi Bonnet.
My last thoughts are just that empathy, feeling with someone, whether they're feeling empowered or whether they're feeling neglected, for example, is also something that can fill our bucket or give us a spoon.
Yes.
It can take away our spoon, but just like you were talking about earlier with the breathing, it can be something that gives us another spoon or a whole box of big serving spoons like Roxy was talking about earlier. And And it's just knowing what we have to give and what we need that's on our list. So I think it's important for our listeners to take a minute today and write down what things fill their buckets or give them spoons or help them or whatever, and do a running list on our phones like Roxy suggested. And then we always have it with us to turn to. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that you can do empathy and have it be part of your spoon collection.
I love that. Thank you.